I think I accidentally took one extra Adderall today. I'm not sure. Like because that's the whole thing with ADHD. I'm getting a pill box, Jill. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Because if you have ADHD and you're
Yes.
taking meds,
Yes.
then you should have a pill box. What would you agree with that?
110%. And frankly, even if you don't, because we're distracted, we're all doing other things. I literally this morning, I cannot tell you whether or not I took my Plaquenil, which is a medicine I take for autoimmune disease. I I,
Wow.
I
Right.
was in there and I was got distracted. The blow dryer wasn't working. The GFI thing popped off, and I have no idea if I took it or not.
Right. Right. So I
Yeah.
might be I think I might have two because I do feel like I only take 10 milligrams, so it's not like I'm taking so
Right.
many. Because some people take 20, some people take 40. I'll take it twice a day. So, it spreads the faster acting, but I feel extra focused and extra creative. And so we'll see
Yes.
how this
Yes,
goes.
Harlan. This is great.
And it's a newer thing for me because I started taking medication about 6 months ago for my ADHD, which has not only helped me to regulate in terms of my executive functioning, but also to help me emotionally. That's been the biggest thing.
I I have very strong feelings about that because that is not something that we were taught in medical school, and it was not something that I considered as part of the equation until my our one of our daughters started it, and the difference in her social interactions was
Yeah.
day and night, and it was just like a light bulb went on for me at that point.
It's fascinating, right? Like that wasn't because I have a therapist and I've been, think maybe about 6 years, maybe now, 7 years, and, it's been wonderful, and there's been a lot of self-discovery, and the thing is, we've tried so many different ways to help me to, manage everyday life in a way that's healthier, and it's from, the journaling to, I log, I have some, you know, deep-seated body and eating issues where it's hard for me to know when I'm full,
Mhm.
because that sense is really dulled. So for me, I'll log, and as I'm saying this, I haven't been consistent. Like I have to, and I give myself grace, but I log, I exercise. I went on the Peloton last night, which was great. I exercise regularly. That's really important. Some meditation, which I'm going to do more. This is great when I talk about it because it reminds me. And then the medicine was the last piece because it was, and the way I describe it is that I was like driving 70 miles per hour with the emergency brake on. That's how I told him my whole life, and
Yeah.
being very self-critical and really struggling to find that healthy balance. And it was, why don't we try meds after I was evaluated? Why don't we try medication? And we waited a long time. And boy, Joe, I can't tell you. I talk about how I really appreciate medication. Everyone has their own experiences, but as a 50, I just turned 52. That's right. Is that how old I am? Yeah. So I can't remember how old I am. I can't remember my
Same.
right. So now it's I am looking at the world through a very different lens, and I am able to be much less reactive. My wife, I think, just I say likes me more. We have a wonderful relationship,
Sure.
but I am less sensitive and less reactive in certain situations, and it's just been a wonderful development. So anyway,
That's fantastic.
yeah,
That is honestly, that just really makes me very happy for you, and I think particularly in the role that you play, being able to talk to young people who are struggling with all of that, and then there's, the parental opinions about medicines and political opinions about medicines and all the things right now.
right.
I I I am so glad that you're finding success with that.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens, and the the connection with students and with parents, with anyone, is what are the things that we have independent of other people and other things that give us a sense of light, a sense of joy, a sense of balance. I label that as training spiritually.
Mhm.
And those things are so important, the habits, the rituals, those routines, those healthy those healthy I know the word addiction is very loaded, but as someone who is prone to addictive behavior, having healthier routines fosters a better. I don't use the word foster. I'm not gonna use the word foster with you, Jill. Fosters. Do you use the word foster?
I do.
Is that just part of your vernacular?
I I think so. I use it a lot.
You don't really think about it. But for you, you're a doctor. It's different. It's like there's certain words I don't I think sometimes when I talk to people, I try sometimes impress them, or I try to use words I don't always use. So anyway, they foster a better sense of self. So Jill Grimes, Dr. Jill Grimes, I'll do an intro. I think this needs an intro too. But today I'm here with Dr. Jill Grimes, and as you can see, I'm incredibly comfortable talking to people. Call you Dr. Jill.
Sure. Yes.
So should I call you Dr. Jill today? What would you like?
Uh, hey, you. Anything is good. Dr. Jill works.
I'm gonna do Dr. Jill for the rest of this. We're transitioning into the Dr. Jill part of this podcast. So I'm very comfortable with you. You are incredibly knowledgeable, wonderful, helpful. You have incredible videos on where are you doing your best work, or where are you getting the most traction right now?
Honestly, I have been on a little bit of a hiatus from TikTok with all the ups and downs of
Yeah,
that, and I've been focusing a little more attention on Instagram,
cool.
but,
Yeah,
floating around.
Instagram's great, and I'm doing a lot on Substack and YouTube. But Substack, I'm excited for that. And if you're interested in some of the things I'm doing
Yes.
there, because I'm always trying to find different ways to reach people, and I'm super excited about that. And I think for this particular podcast, we'll release it on Substack and distribute it
Great.
in different ways. But it's a great way to stay in touch. And really, I look at you as a person who's in my corner, who's in so many people's corner. You are the author of the Ultimate Student Health Handbook. This is the latest edition. This is the third edition. And
Thank you.
in this book, it's everything from hangovers to homesickness. And you just have so many wonderful things to offer here. And I opened it to the nice note. You wrote me a note. Just a very loving person. Would you say that's
Thank you.
accurate, or is it all just a ruse?
It's not. I love people. I'm a lover, not a fighter.
I'm just kidding, Joe. You're like pure light and love and wonderful, and you really
Maybe
want
not
to.
pure light, but I try.
Well, you got a life. You got things going on, and I think the people who love to help or find so much joy in helping. I think so many of us, uh, you know, we there's a balance. It's easier to love other people than it is for me to love myself at times.
Always true.
Yeah,
Always true. We're empaths, and I always say no one cries alone. If you're crying, I'm crying right with you. We feel deeply,
yeah.
and I think that's why I get so much joy of helping people, is because I feel the joy as much as I feel sadness if someone else has that.
Yeah, yeah, and it is a very difficult thing to balance. Um, there was an event I did a few weeks ago. I did a video about this, and when people bring me to speak, a lot of times I'll go to schools where you have an achievement culture, and
Mhm.
in that achievement
Mhm.
culture, you have a very high GPA. You
Yeah.
have students who are going to more selective schools, and this idea of being wrong is something that students don't know how to they don't know how to be wrong
Or fail. Mm-mm.
or fail, right? And there are so many aspects of life outside of what happens in the classroom, and I think that's also one of the reasons why I'm really excited to have you here. And we mentioned this before, that we've talked before, but I'm open to just having like a quick hit of like, this is a problem, Jill. Let's just get a quick answer, because not only are you in my corner, anybody who appreciates what I do, I look at you as being in their corner as well.
We are on the same team.
Yeah. So the taking care of yourself, the social, the emotional, the physical aspects, students don't know how to they don't know how to do this, first of all, a lot of them, because they haven't had to do it on their own, correct?
Mhm. Mhm.
And then when they have to do it, this idea of doing it right is something that I think a lot of students struggle with. Would you say that's accurate?
Yes, and the one of the biggest surprises of students going from high school to college is how much extra time they have. Because when you're in high school, you're literally scheduled from, 5 a.m. swim practice all the way through, your classes are back to back to back to back, and then you've got
Yeah.
your after school stuff and it everything is set.
Yeah.
And some of that set is good because it includes your swim team practice or soccer or whatever physical activity might have been in there. And then you get to college and your classes are spaced out. It's all different, and you lose those routines, and there's nobody overseeing you telling you what and when to do things. So yeah, it's such a huge transition. And I think the more they go into it with open eyes and set things up to increase that schedule, the higher chance of success that they're going to have.
Yeah. Routines and rituals
Yes.
reinforce positive behaviors. I just made
Yeah.
that's such a great flow. Routines and rituals
Yeah.
reinforce positive behaviors. So, and I think that's something that students need to recognize, because they don't have those, and you don't know how to create those, especially when you're in that new environment. And this goes
Mhm.
hand in hand in taking care of your body, taking
Yes.
care of your brain, and even the routine of hygiene.
Yes. And that hygiene is especially difficult for brains wired differently with ADHD. Hygiene, it slips a lot.
Mhm.
And it just doesn't make it up to that top priority, and it's very easy to skip brushing your teeth and go straight to bed, and to lose track of when you've showered and washed your hair and different things and washed your sheets.
Right.
Actually, a lot of people don't wash their sheets in college, but that's that's a separate issue. But yes, and one of the things that I really want to help change the lens on is exercise. People are like, oh my gosh, I don't want to gain the freshman 15, right?
Mm,
That's just forever a big
right.
thing. And our generation of parents perpetuate that too, because we're worried about our kid
Yeah.
gaining the freshman 15 while we gained the COVID-19. But
Right.
anyway, but the point is, rather than looking at the exercise as being this caloric thing, I think it's so important, as you and I were talking earlier, about that ritual and the routine and the exercise, but that is for your mental health.
Yeah.
That increases the serotonin levels in your brain, and it is so important. And we have so many studies, big meta-analysis, that show that consistent exercise is equivalent to low doses of antidepressant medications, and they work best together for people who need both. I'm not saying one always replaces the other,
Right.
but I think reframing that exercise as being part of your mental health, just that part of that routine and ritual and success.
Absolutely. And I love that we started it there, because I wasn't even thinking about that. I think it's so overwhelming, all the different aspects of navigating change.
Yes.
And the self-care piece of it tends to be pushed aside. But even thinking about, okay, if you're having some sort of challenge, starting with the basics of what is your routine, you know, and that includes sleep.
Sleep, 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 sleep.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, what are your thoughts about sleep?
So the most I have many thoughts about sleep. The first
Yeah.
of which is, without sleep, everything else goes to heck. right?
Mhm.
If you have a tired brain, everything is worse. You can't learn new information. You can't process it. You can't regurgitate it. You can't study well. You can't learn well. And your emotions run out of check. So sleep has to be a huge priority. Now, sleeping in college is a whole new experience. So there's a lot of things that you can do. The biggest mistake that students make is not getting up at the same time each day. And it's hard because if you've got an early Tuesday, Thursday morning, 9 a.m. class, but you don't start classes till 1 on your other days, you're going to want to sleep in. But the reality is, if you look at sleep and just physiologically, how you're going to function the best is to get up at the same time, roughly within an hour at least every
Right.
day. Take a nap if you need to later, but get up at the same time every day. That's going to promote that circadian rhythm and help you sleep better. That's more important than what time you go to sleep. And then all the things that you can do to enhance your sleep, that a cool dark room, having a fan. Your wazoo is the fan that you really like, right?
Right. Well,
um,
woozy alert.
woozy.
The woozy alert. Yeah.
I always love you seeing it with
I just
that.
like saying "woozy," right?
Yeah,
Costco has the Woozu for anybody interested. The Woozu people love the Woozu fan. They get so excited about the Woozu.
there you go. So, but having that little fan, I like weighted blankets for people who like that. That is not heavy weighted. Start with a lower weight, like 7 or 8 pounds. Don't go straight to a 15-pound weighted blanket, because honestly, then that's too heavy and it's a pain in the rear to move, and then students won't move it, and then it just ends up shoved behind the bed. So a lighter weighted blanket, the cooling breeze, get the blackout sleep mask. Get 2 of those, please, because they need to be thrown in the laundry. Otherwise, you'll end up getting acne, and then that's annoying. So, um, all the self-care things. So you make it dark, cool, got the breeze, got the white noise, maybe some meditation, relaxation, or sleep stories, all of these things. But prioritizing sleep, if you could only pick one thing to prioritize for your overall mental health and success, I would say it would be sleep. Nutrition is next, exercise is next, but
Yeah.
sleep is just so important. It's critical.
So students need a sleeping plan. Like, they need to
Yes.
pre-plan, because sometimes you just get there and you're like, I'm just gonna do what I did before. But especially if you're sharing space where you can, see someone else sleeping, which I always think is like, that's just bizarre that you go to a
Yeah.
place where, like, where you can see someone sleep, where you can watch them sleep, and you don't wanna watch someone sleep, because if they wake up
No.
and you're watching them, it's very
Yeah.
concerning
Or
for
watching them sleep with their friend who's in bed with them.
that's a whole I like that you go there, Jill. See, there's very Dr. Jill. See, there's very few people that can go right into the person in the other bed sharing some space while you're in the room, which happens.
A lot. It happens a lot. And it's not always sexual. Some people just, people have different levels of physical space and touchiness, and some people are very cuddly,
Mhm.
and they're cuddly with friends, not just in a sexual way. But all of that stuff is uncomfortable, and the beginning of the school year, these are the things you want to talk about with your roommate early on. and
Right.
and Harlan, you do such a good job teaching kids how to do that, how to address these uncomfortable situations. Because if you let it go, then it just blows out of proportion, and then things are bad.
Yeah,
But it's hard to sleep with someone else in your room, and especially someone that you're not related to. You may not even know them. You may not have met them before college.
right. It's huge, and I really try to help people to plan so that when they're in those situations, instead of being reactive, and when you're in a new place surrounded by new people, trying to work through all of these changes. I've been telling people more and more, yeah, I might seem like I'm a college expert, but really I'm a change expert, because
That's a good
when you
point.
yeah, I mean, and the same framework that I share with students is the same framework that applies to parents and grandparents, and it's just different situations, and the rules of sharing space with someone and the ability to communicate and have difficult conversations are things that don't go away. This is just a time to practice doing it for the first time. And for parents, because I have a lot of parents who really appreciate what I have to share. For parents, these are things that you can talk about, that you can share, and I'll share more videos, and we'll share clips of this conversation. But just when thinking about sleep and shopping,
Yes.
because we're so focused on getting things that are the best and have the most reviews. It's really imagining like what would help you to create the most comfortable, healthy sleeping environment. And even the question of if you're sharing a space with someone and they're either on top of you or like in a bed on top of
Mhm.
you, which if
Right,
you
right.
if you have a weighted blanket, and so if someone has a 20-pound weighted blanket and they're sleeping on top of you, you gotta be careful because that blanket falls. It's 20 pounds of blanket falling on your head. Anyway, I just thought of that.
Right. Yeah.
Um, but when somebody is in that space, even having something to cover, like, can you find like a bed sheet or something
Mhm.
that can block out the light just within your sleeping space?
Yes, and a lot of people do that.
Yeah.
Yes. You can create that, and this is everyone gets excited this time of year, especially parents of first-time kids, your oldest going to college, right? It's so exciting, you've got your dorm shopping list. The things I suggest spending the extra money on, and it depends on the kid, but if you know your kid is that you had to take the tag out of every single shirt they've ever owned. This is me. Um, if they are very tactile, I would spend money on sheets that they find comfortable, whatever that is. It doesn't have to be $10 million sheets, but there's a big variety. I would spend the money on the sheets because we want good quality sleep. I generally suggest a 1.5 to 2 inch foam mattress topper. The ones that are like 4 inch, if people really like super cushy, then that's their thing, those big giant ones. But that also makes it hard for the sheets to stay on, and then they're pulling off. And anyway, but I would spend money on good quality sheets, a good quality foam topper. Again, about 1.5 inches to 2 inches max, I think is plenty for most. And um and an extra set of pillowcases, because you would like them to, even if they're not changing out their sheets, you want them to change out their pillowcases. Again, this is an acne issue.
Mhm.
um and then the fan so that it's cool, and eye mask. And because you can't really do blackout shades, and you really don't want to do blackout shades in a shared space most of the time anyway.
Mhm.
So you just want to black out your own eyes. And those things are critical. Also depends on the smell and smell sensitivity of the roommates. You don't want to do floral smells. Floral smells just end up causing congestion and irritating
Mhm.
people that are sensitive to it. But you can get the solid ones that just sort of soak up the odor. And I strongly suggest when you move in, bring two of those. One goes straight in the closet because dirty shoes and stuff are going to go in there, and dirty clothes, and that's going to smell up stuff. And you just want to, it may not keep the room smelling necessarily fresh, but it will keep it from smelling foul.
Do you have a suggestion on the odor absorption?
I honestly, I think Arm& Hammer is the one I've bought the most, but
Right.
just the gel ones.
Right. The topper, someone just sent me a message about a mattress topper, and they're like, there's this one that's $300 to $400 that people suggest, and they say you get one, and then you have it the whole you don't have to replace it. But I see you making a face for those
Yeah.
who are listening. Right. It's not that necessary.
No, I mean, you should be able to get a good one they're in the $100 range. I would say they're in the
Yeah.
80 to 120. You usually can get them on sale.
Yeah.
Best Buy, Target, all those. I don't think you need these bazillion dollar ones. And honestly, some people are rougher than others on their mattresses. Remember that a dorm bed is also a dorm couch. It's a dorm chair. It's a dorm where they do their homework. It's a it's
Right.
the piece of furniture. So stuff gets spilled on it. Um, you know, things happen on it. Yeah, I personally wouldn't earmark $300 or $400 for that.
Right. That's great. I have a crowdsourced list. I do one for Amazon, I do one on ShopMy, and for anybody who's listening, you can go to my website and I'll share some of those. And, Jill, if you have any feedback, or any favorites, I'll
Yes, I'll send you some favorites to list for sure.
really? Oh my gosh, that'd be great. I'll put like a recommended, a Dr. Jill recommended.
Doctor recommended.
Right. That's great. That's great. Well, one other thing I wanted to add to this, and this is something that I personally have had to deal with. And here, I'll show you something. For those who are just listening, you can't see this, but here, I'll show you this. Look at my nose. See that?
Uh-huh. Only one side.
See how that collapses? I have a collapsed nostril. I have a deviated septum I got to take care of. So the reason I'm sharing this with you, Dr. Jill, and everyone else, it's
So
pretty
you
dramatic.
snore. I'm hearing that you
I
snore.
snore, and my wife and I, have talked about this, because when I snore, sometimes I wake her up. Everyone's learning my medical history, but I'm not really, I'm not embarrassed about anything. I went
You
and
can't help snoring. I mean,
yeah, and I don't want to cause a disruption. See, I'm the type of guy, like, I really love when my wife is happy and gets good sleep, and I really am a roommate who wants to get along. And I get upset when I upset her in my sleep. See, that's really frustrating. Someone who's a pleaser, when you
yes.
upset someone in your
Yeah.
sleep, it's like, I can't do it right. Like, I'm sleeping and I'm pissing her off. And she's very nice and very sweet. Again, I don't, these are just normal everyday things.
Yeah.
I'll double check to make sure. Yeah. I don't know if she's shared that, but I went and I got a mouth guard, and
Mhm.
it ends up, it like pushed my jaw just enough where it opened up and I don't snore, which is great. But I think this septum thing, I'm gonna take care of that. The point of this is there could be noises, and
Yes.
I I get a little bit uncomfortable because I don't know what's gonna happen in the future. And again, this is something, there's not any evidence about this. I have started to use, and it's not every night, but I'll use my AirPods, and
Yeah, don't
they're noise canceling.
yeah.
Why are
Okay.
you against this? And we can be honest. I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
So here's my thought on that, especially for our college students. You don't want to sleep with something in your ear because one, half of them wear them in their ears all day long anyway. They've already got something in there, and that's going to promote um, more wax buildup and irritation and can cause a problem. What I suggest is it looks like a sweatband, and I find the link on
Yeah,
Amazon and send it to you.
please.
But
Yeah,
it looks like a sweatband. It is Bluetooth. It's I mean, they're these it's like a $20 thing. It's not like a
sure.
big noise canceling thing, but it's noise canceling enough that you know, you can listen to meditations in it, you can fall asleep in it, but there's nothing in your ear. You don't want to sleep. It's kind of the equivalent to sleeping with contacts in your eyes. You don't ever want to go to sleep with contacts in your eyes, no matter, it doesn't matter if they're 7-day one. Every ophthalmologist will tell you, do not sleep with contacts in your eyes. Every ear, nose, and throat doctor will tell you, do not sleep with with stuff inside your ears. So it's better to block on the outside. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, and I know that there are lots of people who are gonna resist this. It's gonna be another one of those things, Dr. Jill, that you share, that
Yeah.
people are gonna be selective and say, "Oh,
Sure.
okay,
Sure.
thanks for sharing that. I'm gonna move on to the next thing." I I appreciate it. I think it makes a lot of sense. I was going with, and I do, boy, I get really, I have to be careful because I forget that you might say, "Hey, don't do that." But I know how to clean my ears. Like, I clean my ears. My ears are fantastic. And so ear hygiene. is something that I get a 10 out of 10. It's for one of the very few things in my life that I get a 10 out of 10. Maybe I'll do a 9.9 because I don't think anything could be a 10. So I'm a 9.9. I could always improve. But the part of it was I I get a little bit worried about the Bluetooth, about putting Bluetooth stuff near my brain. And, we don't know. And for a while we were like telling our kids, no, no Bluetooth, everything has to be wired. And then somehow we just kind of shifted and, Bluetooth is everywhere and people wear headphones. So I do. And I know it's like, people have so many different ways. We only know so much. So that was what I was getting at. But I do it
Yeah.
occasionally. Um, and I like the idea that if I'm going to have something that it could be wired, which is less, there are fewer things that are wired, but I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
I read the studies that come out periodically. I was a little paranoid about it. Maybe, gosh, time flies now. So pre-COVID, so probably
Yeah.
5 or 10 years ago now. I was a little more paranoid about it. I'm a little less paranoid about it now, partly because we're getting it everywhere. I
Yeah.
mean, from our microwave to whatever. Um, so I'm more concerned with direct damage,
Yeah.
at the moment,
Yeah.
and and the ideal thing, of course, would be to be sleeping by yourself in this wonderful, cool place that's
Yeah.
dark and quiet, and
Cool.
you can listen to music, and there's not even another person in
Right.
the room with you. But our spouses sometimes want to sleep with us, so that's a good thing.
Yeah. Well, there is there is a music I play. I've been doing this. I don't know if you probably can't see. This is 432 hertz miracle sleep, and it says it's a frequency. And I've been playing this kind of loud
Oh,
and not and I just play it in the room now because my wife likes it too. It sounds like a spa. But
nice.
it's 432 hertz miracle sleep, deep relaxation, raise positive vibrations. You think there's anything to the frequency?
I do. Um, I don't know much about that, but I have, and they have similar things for dogs,
Right.
and other animals to calm them down. It, I, there's, I'm sure that there is. I don't know that, I can't speak to that particular
Yeah.
hertz, but I really, it took me over 20 years to find meditation that I could do consistently. And it was
Yeah.
actually through Peloton, through Ross Rayburn, who's no longer at Peloton, but I still listen to his meditations.
Yeah.
It's become Pavlovian. His voice comes on, and I just
Yeah.
start relaxing.
Yeah.
And so the main the my when I talk to students about or anyone about meditation, my thing is don't stop after you try 2 or 3.
Yeah.
I mean, it could take 100, but somewhere you'll hit the frequency that whether it's the pitch of their voice or the tone, or maybe it's the sleep stories that a lot of college students like
Yeah.
sleep stories. And
Like
I
sleep
start
stories.
listening to them too much. I sleep stories don't do it for me, but they are wonderful for a lot of people.
Sleep stories like lullaby,
They're adult sleep stories, and they are about different topics. The last one I listened to was actually about the Loch Ness monster, but I was like, "Ooh, Nessie," and then it kind of woke me up, and I started listening more. But they're not read in a monotone, but they're just these kind of calming stories. It's sort of a news story, and I think some of it. This is my personal opinion. Our attention spans are so shortened, with all of our social media
Yeah.
clips have to be 30 seconds, 90 seconds, whatever. I think some of it's just that we do start kind of drifting off because we're listening and now it's been a few paragraphs,
Yeah.
just but you're listening to that and you're paying attention to that, which means your brain is letting go of the 30 things that it was
Right.
cycling on that you have to do for tomorrow. So it helps.
What's interesting is you refer to that as a meditation, and, when I think of a meditation, it's,
Like,
you know
om.
well, there's that, yeah, there's that, and then the breathing. I know there's
Mhm.
not really focus on my breathing. I like 10% Happier, Dan
Mhm.
Harris, and
Yes.
he's
Mhm.
been wonderful, he has a great Substack channel, and he also does some meditations, Jeff, it was, so it's Dan, and then, Jeff, he wrote the book, Meditation for Fidgety Skeptics, and, I like
Great
Jeff a lot
title.
too. Yeah, it's a great book for anybody who wants to just understand the actual research and the impact that meditation can have, and how this isn't something that just people who are, Buddhist monks will do. I know people don't believe that's what it is right now, but that's how it used to be. Uh,
Right.
it's
And
become more extreme.
I've tried it all. I've tried the, sitting pose and
Yeah,
the pitches and the different tones. I've done, and I use breathing meditations a lot, just box breathing.
yeah.
Um,
What
you
works
know,
for you best?
in an acute anxiety situation, box breathing, and when the count doesn't matter, whether four in, four out, hold it each, doing your little box of breathing. That helps me the most, because partly because I know, as a doctor, I know physiologically, if I can slow down my breath and do the slow measured
Mhm.
breathing, it does slow down my heart rate, which then calms down my brain. And knowing that helps. Now, is that always enough? No, it's not always enough. But a lot of times it is.
Let's just explain this for someone who wants
Sure.
to use a breathing technique. Uh,
Okay.
Sounds like you've shared this advice with others. So,
Yeah.
for someone who's feeling anxious, who is in a place where everything seems very big, and
Yeah.
they need to just take a moment to just stop and be grounded and present, what type of breathing do you suggest? And if you can even offer some instructions, I think that'd be really helpful.
Sure. So the simplest one is so box breathing just means doing like a square box. So we've got four sides of the breathing. So you're going to breathe in for a slow count of four. You're
I'm just gonna do it. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, walk me through it. Do it. Let's
Okay.
do
All
it.
right,
Okay.
let's do it. Okay, so we're going to breathe in for four. Ready? One, two, three, four. Now hold, two, three, four. Breathe out slowly. One, two, three, four, and hold empty. Two, three, four. And repeat.
Just have to
Eh,
relax.
It's just a box. So in for four, hold for four, out for four, empty for four. Just, doing nothing for 4.
I've heard of
So
like 4-7-8.
there's a million different ways to do it, but when I'm anxious, the last thing I wanna do is try and remember 4 different numbers, and
Right. Right. Creates
so
more anxiety.
and it doesn't have to be 4, it could be 5, it could be 3.
Right.
If you're hyperventilating, sometimes the most you might only get 3 because you're feeling so anxious. But when you do that, and maybe you do 3 that first box, and maybe you can do 4 on your second box. But it usually takes about, I'd say, 4 or 5 cycles of that. So you're getting into a minute and a half ish, and your heart rate will slow down, which then feeds back to your brain. And your brain, when your heart is racing, whether you just drank caffeine or a scorpion stung you, whatever has sped up your heart rate,
Right.
um, you that your brain interprets that as kind of panicky. And
Right.
when your heart rate slows down for any reason, your brain interprets that as more calm. And which is exactly how we use medications for stage fright, for fear of public speaking,
Right.
for flying on a plane. I had an MRI of my neck this week. If you have an MRI, you go into a tube, And if you're claustrophobic, eh, use the breathing, slows things down, all of those things.
Well, my heart rate went down. I'm just looking at my watch, and
Oh,
it
good.
went down from like 5 minutes ago. And I never knew the part about holding empty, because most of the breathing I've heard, it's so I think the one I'm most familiar with is you breathe in for 4, you hold for 7, you exhale for 8. And it was more of a triangle, it wasn't a box. So I like the
Yeah,
box because you need the holding empty is
yeah,
is actually a really, like, even this one of holding empty was like, wow, I'm not breathing for like 4 seconds, and I'm just still. Like,
yeah. It's
yeah.
it's a good visual, isn't it?
Yeah, I like that.
It's
That's
a
really great. I love that. I love this conversation. This is so fun because these conversations, this idea, I'm gonna reflect later about just how much I love this conversation, because what we're doing, though, is really starting with, you are going to be managing all of these different changes.
yes,
And when you manage these changes, there are gonna be things that you don't know how to do. And it doesn't mean that you are wrong or not enough. It just means you haven't done these things before. And for
right.
people who aren't conditioned to not knowing, who sometimes get embarrassed or uncomfortable or don't even notice, these are things that we need to think about. And they don't teach
Yeah,
us these things in school.
right, and we should.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, in family medicine, it was very interesting. I didn't learn that in my training in family medicine, but very quickly after I finished my training and, we go to continuing education, all of a sudden it started becoming more and more important. And we would start huge group sessions and they're like, okay, we're going to do measured breathing now.
Yeah.
And, especially if it was studying for board exams and people are getting anxious, reliving the whole test anxiety thing. But it makes a difference. And it's not woo woo. I talk about this a lot because a lot of times people are, oh, my therapist told me to just take deep
Yeah.
breaths and just, it's going to help your panic attack. Well, it actually will, but not if, not so flippantly.
Right.
You have to actually go through that. So I'm really glad we did that. Thanks
Right.
for taking us through that.
But it calms your sympathetic nervous system. Isn't that
Yes.
that's my showing off, but it's,
Good job.
yeah, because I really am always, the joy of working so hard for so many years to try and find the balance and be able to regulate myself emotionally, is I have, tried so many different ways to do that, and all of them, at different times can be effective. There's this, wonderful book called Shift by
I
Ethan Cross.
Yes, and I own it, but I have not read it yet.
Yeah, I was so lucky I got to visit with Ethan, and it was a wild thing where he shared a video, and then I shared something with him. I said I commented, and then he sent me a message saying that they talked about my book in something, and I was, like, so floored, because anytime anyone talks about me, I'm like, I just, I have this, like, "Really? Why would you?" And,
'Cause
then
you're
it was
helping lots of
well
people.
well, it was my Expectant Father book, which is even more wild. I
Oh,
wrote a book called Dad,
yeah.
I'm Expecting Too, and it's all different changes. Anyway, Ethan was, we had a nice exchange, and then he was doing an event close by, and I had coffee with him, and, and his book, Shift, is really about finding different ways to regulate yourself emotionally, and the thing that I loved from the conversation, there are many parts, but it was that one size doesn't fit all, and
Yes.
what's also interesting is what might work for you. And in this book, and I'm gonna figure out how to. I think Ethan would probably be someone who'd be willing to visit on a podcast, which I'll do. There, the idea that what works for me might not work for you, and then the other part, which occurred to me, is what works for me at this
Today
moment
won't work
might
later.
might not work for me this other moment. And if you're someone who's not used to getting things right, when you do something and it's not a good fit. A good therapist, the therapy, oh, I don't do therapy, I had a bad therapy session. Or if it's, I tried to meditate and I just can't do it, I tried it 5 times. And these are things that we need to get great at practicing, and having a wide range of tools is incredibly helpful.
Yes, and we see that over and over, and look at the just the variety of ADHD planners, right?
Yeah,
And almost all of them work great for a
yeah,
bit, but
right.
then they stop.
It's so funny.
And it's not that they stop, we change different, we have different things. And yes, I think it is I what I like there you go.
This is the Order Out of Chaos one. I really like this one. I haven't used it. I haven't used it in a while. Like, I like it. And the thing is, I was using it all the time, and I stopped using it because now I use Slack and the updates in Slack. But I think for someone with ADHD, you rotate around.
You do, and that's just it. You find what works, it works for a bit, and then you find it doesn't. And one of the things I've always tried to work with my patients, my all of family medicine,
Yeah.
not just college students, is that okay, let's let's see where you're at now. Nutrition and weight is always a constant thing. And they're like, but but I've done this and I've done this and I've done this and I've done that. It's like, okay, but what you're doing right now isn't working for you today. So, all
Right.
right. Doesn't mean it won't work again. Doesn't mean you can't use parts of it, but let's relook at what else is out there.
Right.
And I think, and that's such a critical skill to learn.
Yeah.
And college students are primed to learn that as they launch into this next chapter of their life.
Yeah, they don't recognize that. Even correlates to relationships,
Mhm.
because who you are at 18 or 20 and how you process the world around you is very different than who you are at 40 or 50 or 60. And
Yes.
there is this association with the pain of dealing with rejection and loss and shame. And this is why I love the law of rejection, the universal rejection truth, this idea that not everyone and everything will always respond the way I want. I've reshaped it into the law of rejection because it is a law. And this law of rejection says you can be the best, the brightest, do everything right, and not everyone and everything's going to respond to you the way you always want. And the thing that's so interesting about how we process the world around us and work through relationships and emotions is how we processed at 18 or 19 before we fell in love and got our heart broken, and how we process in the future is different because we've lived that experience, but the pain of the experience tends to be the thing that's magnified, that keeps us from being open and vulnerable to trying new things because we are so focused on avoiding the pain.
Right. Right. Anything to avoid the pain. Right.
Yeah. And this idea of trying new things and being open to trying new things with an understanding that if the thing doesn't work, it doesn't have to be that nothing is going to work. And it could just be this idea that not everything is going to work the way we want it to work, how we
Right.
want it to work
Right. Today.
today.
And
And
that same thing might work great even a week from now.
right. So for parents who are trying to, well, for parents, a lot of parents though, are saying, who are trying to convince their student or help their student, I think for a lot of parents though, they need to also be open to how your student processes what you're saying today could be different than 3 years ago or 3 months ago. And the idea of being patient and trying to understand how they're processing, and what we can do to be as helpful as possible, which is, the listening part is tricky. So much, Jill. So there are a bunch of issues I want to make sure we touch on. I'm going to let you, Dr. Jill, during our, I'm going to call this our rapid fire part.
Okay.
So it
All
turns
right.
out to not be rapid fire because I slow down everything. But we're gonna call it rapid
Me
fire with
too.
the intention
All right.
of firing rapidly. For you, what is, if there's something you need to communicate today to students, to families, to anyone, and if this ended and you'd be like, Harlan, I'm so frustrated because I didn't get to say that thing that I wanted to say that was so important. Let's start with that.
That's easy. Number one thing I want to communicate is for students to not wait until they are in crisis to get help. This is true whether it is mental health, whether they are struggling with test anxiety, whether they have a severe sore throat, whether they fell and hit their head and might have a concussion. Don't wait until kind of disaster is striking to seek help. The more proactive you can be, the faster you're going to improve the situation and get help. So that is the most important thing I want to communicate.
I want to give a quick story to illustrate that. So when I was in college, my first year roommate, this was when I was living in the fraternity house, and it was second semester, and came into our room, and he kind of looked a little green. He said he threw up the night before and threw up blood. And he said he needed to take a nap because he was just really hungover. And we let him take a nap. He came back maybe an hour later, and he looked even worse. And we said, listen, throwing up blood is not a normal thing. Because in that
Mhm.
previous conversation, the part I left off is, he said, you threw up blood. Like, we were surprised. And he said, that's normal for him. That happens on occasion. And that was,
Side
started.
note, people, that's always bad. Go ahead.
Anytime you throw up blood, you need to get medical attention. That is and you do it immediately, because he took this nap, came back. Fortunately, second time we said, you need to go to the hospital. You need to go. And my roommate drove him, got to the hospital. His blood pressure was like 60 over 30, something just awful. He passed out. They took him in to have emergency surgery. He ruptured his esophagus and was hemorrhaging all day. And had he not gone
You would
to
have
the
died.
hospital, he probably would have died. I mean, I think
Yes.
he would have died. I know. I get
Yes.
it's frightening, and I get upset. And fortunately, we were able to help, and his parents came in from out of town, and they were very grateful. And he's still around today. But this idea of, when in doubt, get help.
Yes.
Make that a
Yes.
rule. When in doubt, get
When
help.
in doubt, get help. And it's hard because there's in every group, there's the mom or the dad in the friend group, and they're the one who tends to drink the least. They're the designated driver. They're the one who's cleaning up the puke of the person who threw up in the backseat of the car, and that becomes your role, and you start expecting more of yourself in that role because that's your role and that becomes your identity, and you want to take care of people. But let me tell you, those are the ones I worry about, because they're going to try to take care of stuff that they shouldn't be taking care of.
Right.
And I want to empower those young people who hearts of gold, empathetic, kind, loving souls, but do not take this all on yourself. There's stuff that you don't know that you don't know. And
Right.
there are medical issues that you don't want to go back and regret not getting help.
For students who are worried about the repercussions if you're doing something illegal or doing something that violates student conduct,
Yeah.
most schools, like, I don't know of very many schools that uh,
Mm.
will punish someone
Right.
for reporting. And in fact, there are amnesty laws or student
Good.
conduct
Yeah.
policies that make it very clear, if you are acting on behalf of someone else and you have done something that violates the code of conduct, you are safe. You are
Right.
safe of any repercussions, because that's the thing. If this happens, we're going to deal with the consequences. And I think, especially when you're part of a group, whether it's a Greek organization or an athletic group or
Right.
performing arts, this risk that if we share what's going on or people know, there's going to be consequences. But the consequence of someone dying or being permanently injured is going to be far more.
And you living with that guilt. It's not just the horrific loss
Yeah,
of the family, who obviously their families
Right.
forever destroyed having lost someone, but the people who could have intervened, they live very, very difficult lives as well.
Yeah.
And mostly there's Good Samaritan laws that are gonna protect you. Like you said, sometimes there's organizations involved in that. I mean, there are repercussions, but, get help.
Yeah.
Get help, get help, get help.
It's an interesting thing you mentioned.
And and,
Yeah.
can we talk briefly about Narcan?
We're gonna talk about that for
Oh,
sure.
okay.
We're gonna talk
Okay.
about that for sure. But
Okay.
the impact, it was just something that you mentioned, and it came up. I recorded another podcast yesterday, and we tend to focus on the immediate consequences of how that will impact our lives at school, or will impact our ability to, you know, be able to reach our goals and live our dreams. But man, that idea of to live with that. I don't think people understand the magnitude and how much that can just mess with your life of living with that, and you've
Yes.
seen that, right?
Yes. Yes, yes, and the prolonged regret
Right.
and self-hatred and loathing and,
Yeah.
uh, difficulty with self-esteem and then trouble having relationships. It is real.
So if
It is.
anyone's going through that, if you're feeling those feelings, if this is then, triggering these thoughts of something that happened in your life that's surfacing based on the conversation, then talking it through
Yeah,
and recognizing that this is where that law of rejection is really helpful as well. Is
yeah,
And I've had a lot of students who reach out to me, the number of students who have been in very close proximity to someone who took their own life. There's an
yes.
RA. They don't talk about these. These are I get so many messages from
Mhm.
a parent of a student, or a student who says, this many people in our residence hall, or the RA took their own life. And then it's those questions of, what could I have done? And there's this part of life where, the there isn't a lot that we can do other than learn from it and give ourselves grace and understand that there are things that happen that we don't want to happen, and all we can do is acknowledge it and try to draw something from it that will help us or someone else, and do that healing.
Yeah, survivor's guilt is extremely difficult, and then there's so much crossover now um, with intentional death by suicide versus accidental poisoning of taking a single pill that someone thought they were just gonna get a good night's sleep from taking a Xanax, but they didn't wake up. And there's so many different layers of this guilt now, and it does play into all of the, fentanyl being in study pills and sleep pills and people who are selling these to friends, taking them themselves, not thinking that they're at risk, and then what if, though, one of the pill that you sold to your friend or you gave to your friend then kills that friend? This happens. This happens. It's really tragic.
It's so awful, and I never thought I would be so close to it, I'm so grateful in terms of, family, they're safe, and, I pray that, I talk about, stay away from pills. Do not ever take pills. Like, do not take pills. And someone mentioned the other day, cocaine, could
Yeah,
have
how right.
powder, stay away from powder. Can you test with a fentanyl strip? Can you test powder? Like, if someone wanted to
So,
test cocaine?
yes, you can. You need to understand that you're testing, in most cases, a portion of the powder. The only way you know for sure that there is no fentanyl in any of the powder would be to test all of the powder. And most people test the residue. They take powder, cocaine
Right.
in a baggie, empty the baggie, there's residue left in there, and then they put the liquid in there, and then use the test strips for that, and they're testing that. And does that decrease your risk? Yes, it decreased it, but fentanyl test strips, I am all about harm reduction,
Right.
but fentanyl test strips, they don't test for all the different chemical variants of fentanyl, so they're not 100%. I think the thing they do best is to warn people, hey, this one does have for sure this
Right.
has fentanyl in it. Don't touch it.
Yeah.
But my advice goes with yours. I would not do powders. I would not do pills. The only pill you should be putting in your mouth is one that your doctor prescribed for you, dispensed by a pharmacy. And it's difficult because it's really become a part of culture, and it's not everyone.
Right.
I love that you and I both talk about this. You know, people say, "Well, everybody's vaping, everybody is using THC products, everybody is doing gummies, everybody's drinking, everybody's doing X, Y, or Z."
Right.
It isn't everybody, but it is often everybody within a friend group. And it does make it difficult for people not to follow along with that if that is the friend group that they want to be with.
Right.
Sometimes that is your sign you need to change friend groups if you're not comfortable with that.
Right.
Um, and you know, it, b- kids don't go from walking down the street doing their own thing to suddenly, oh, let me pick up this dirty needle in Central Park in New York City and, do heroin. That's not how drug use happens. Drug use happens because you've got a friend or someone you kind of look up to, maybe a teammate or somebody in your class or whatever, and they see that you're struggling because you're having social anxiety, or you can't sleep, or you need to pull an all-nighter to do something, and they offer you a pill. They offer you a study aid, meaning basically Adderall,
Right.
that they think is Adderall, but it's not. It's not. It might be Adderall, but it also, if they got it from a street dealer, then it very well could have fentanyl in it, or they offer you, a Xanax to sleep. I mean, that's how it happens. And something interesting that I only recently had conversations with some seniors in high school, um, some young men. They were asking me, they're like, but Dr. Jill, why do people buy fentanyl? Like, I don't understand. Like, we get fentanyl's bad. We understand that, but why would
Right.
they buy it? And what they were missing, they were hearing there's this fentanyl crisis, which there is, but they were not getting that people are buying Xanax. It's just not Xanax, it's disguised. And
Right.
I think that is part of the conversation that we as parents really need to get across, that any of these kinds of pills, whether it is the study pill,
Yeah.
like an ADHD pill, or a sleep aid like Xanax, or a pain pill like Oxy, it's not actually Oxy. The problem is that it was manufactured with fentanyl in it that nobody knows is in it. That's what's dangerous.
Yeah. And sometimes they use it to stretch it too, don't they? They'll
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it causes a buzz. It's kind of interesting to me because obviously, the pills do kind of opposite things, right? Xanax makes you relaxed, whereas Adderall makes you more focused, right? So you wouldn't think that putting fentanyl in both of those things would produce a similar response, but the bottom line is it gives you some euphoria. It gives you
So a
that.
smaller amount. So if it's a little bit of fentanyl, then, it can be something that someone can tolerate, because I understand that there's different levels of tolerance with different people.
Yes, if someone has never had fentanyl before, it's gonna take a lot smaller amount to be lethal to them. The problem is that the amounts are so tiny, and, that the risk is just so high. But if someone's been taking oxycodone, prescription oxycodone, they were in a terrible car accident, they broke their pelvis, they were given 30 oxycodone, let's just say, and they've been taking that constantly, and they took a street pill that had some fentanyl in it. That is not gonna necessarily be lethal to them, but if I took it and I hadn't had any at all ever,
Right.
it could kill me. So, and that's,
Right.
yeah, it's just pills are dangerous. And the other message I want to get across, I did an Instagram post about this last week. We have great news that the 2024 data, which is 2025 now, obviously, but we get our data a year later, right? The 2024 data showed that our fentanyl deaths came down by about 37%. That's fabulous. But there were still 48,000 deaths from fentanyl. That's still a lot. So the message isn't that it's gone. It is that we're doing the right things, making Narcan over the counter, which is the antidote to opioid overdose, making that available, making it over the counter without a prescription, and the DEA increasing their seizures as they are continuing to do in 2025 as well. I mean, I think we're all going in the right direction here,
Right.
but this crisis is far from over.
48,000, was that in the US?
Yes.
So 48,000 people.
48,400, checking my notes here.
Right.
Um,
So
and
that's
that was down from fentanyl, and that was down 37% from 2023.
so that's a lot of people. It's a lot of
It is.
it's a lot of children, it's a lot of parents, siblings, cousins, friends, family,
Yes.
and you know, people they don't do this, you know, I think rarely does someone plan on things going so horribly wrong,
Right.
and
And
it's
in 2022, there were just this is easy number to remember, very tragic, but my brain link. In 2022, there were 22 14 to 18-year-olds that died of fentanyl poisoning per week,
wow,
every week.
right. That's just, I mean,
And
that's just so
and those are, by and large, those are not people, those are not the kids. I mean, they're kids, 14 to 18.
yeah,
Those are not kids who were doing tons of drugs. Those are
right,
kids who got one pill one time and
right.
was poisoned.
I have
And
been, I get messages from parents, from siblings, from
yeah.
grandparents who will tell me, you know, this happened to our family member. And
Mhm.
that's the part of, I never thought I would be 1 degree away from so many people who have been so tragically impacted by this. And for students, you know, it's like, I know people, you know, I hear what's going on in campuses, and you know, Coke is more common. It's becoming, you know, more accessible, and
Exactly.
people aren't thinking about that. And it's like, just don't do that. Don't do something where you can accidentally die. Like, that's the thing. Don't accidentally die.
Don't.
Uh, and if you're dealing with whatever you're dealing with, there are so many other ways. If you wanna numb out, and, you know, there's healthy ways to do it, but if you wanna
Mhm.
numb out, don't numb out in a way where you can kill yourself by accident. It's just it's so frightening, and I it's like there's so many things I just wanna, yeah, it's so hard to get through to people, and this is why, even what you were saying with everybody in your friend group might be doing it, which even in that friend group, if you can't say no, and if people pressure you, then
That's not a good
that's
friend.
right. You don't need that friend group. The other thing is, because I try to be realistic, you know, I try to push back with all of this, because I try to see, this is fun. Where's the harm? You know, I'm just enjoying myself, or I'm
Mhm.
experimenting, and you know, and it's like there's this thing of being an adult where, you know, it falls into the adult bucket of, like, you know, just annoying adult things. But this idea of, if you're in a situation where you can where you're doing something where you can accidentally die, what does that say about where you are right now in your life? That's something that is just one of the options, and that's frightening. The other thing is
But
having, yeah, please.
the problem is that young people don't perceive that as a real risk.
Mhm.
They it's they it by and large, hopefully, have not had a lot of people around them die yet. Death is a bit more abstract, and until you've had someone in your friend group who has died of alcohol toxicity or drug overdose or death by suicide, until you've experienced that, it doesn't feel real.
Yeah.
And you get these messages, they hear things, people like me or you saying, hey, this is dangerous. And or let me use weed for example. On me.
Sure.
uh and I am not a fan. um and people say, oh, but I need it to treat my anxiety. Well, if doctors just straight out say, well, it doesn't help anxiety, that's a true statement. But in the immediate moment, it does help, except for when it doesn't, because sometimes it makes people the opposite of, it makes them highly paranoid or whatever. But for most people that use cannabis products, the immediate response is that it helps their immediate anxiety. The problem is, we know that with using it regularly, it actually makes all the anxiety worse and it snowballs the problem. But it's hard to acknowledge that in a simple one sentence message.
Right.
And so instead, what they hear is, she's wrong. She said that's not going to help my anxiety, but it helps my anxiety. Or it helps me, alcohol helps me sleep. Well, it makes you sleepy. It can help you fall asleep, but it impairs the quality of your sleep. And so, there's
Yeah.
things don't fit into a single sound bite. And nowadays, that's all we listen to is the single
Right.
sound bite,
Right. Until there's
preferably coded with a color red or blue, so we know whether we like it or not based purely
right.
on that.
So I'll tell you, this conversation that we're having, like, I can't share clips of this on TikTok or Instagram, or I could share it on YouTube and I can share it on my podcast. But and I haven't been restricted on YouTube, but I know that if I talk about fentanyl, if I talk about cocaine,
Right.
if I talk about cannabis, if I talk about, as I'm doing this, I'm getting like nervous, like, because these are all words, they flag you.
I
And
know. Oh,
right,
I've been shadow banned for weeks.
right.
Yeah.
It's like I I I stay away from certain
Right.
topics because I can't talk about them freely and still be able to share the other information. So this is why it's especially important for parents and for family members, for students who if you appreciate what I'm doing and what Dr. Jill does, share this where you're hearing it with someone else and direct them to that place, because I can't share this. It's like it's wild. I can't talk about chlamydia and syphilis and say the word penis or vagina, or uh you know we talk about birth
Tampon.
control, or
Yeah,
what do you say?
tampon.
Tampon, right? Lubricants. It's like, when you say these words, you're
You get banned.
flagged, right?
Yeah.
And what's unbelievable to me is that, you know, students, they're just, they can't get the information. Fentanyl. Let's just touch on this real quickly. So fentanyl, we know that Narcan, which is also known as naloxone, and
Yes.
naloxone is the generic name.
Right.
And if that, I don't know if that's a Narcan. Show that real close. So for those of you
Yes.
who are
So
listening,
this is Narcan, and I'm going to give you a quick tip about it after you say whatever you're saying. Go ahead.
so there's Narcan and then also naloxone. And I had what was it was last year, or I think it was 2 years ago. I had a doctor who's an expert on this, and we talked a lot about this. It's now available over the counter. A lot of schools will actually have it in their health
Mhm.
centers where you can get it for no cost. There
Mhm.
can be vending machines, or these
Mhm.
standing
Yeah.
tall vending machines where you can get them for no cost through public health centers as well. Resident assistants will often have them. There was even, I saw someone had a box in the hallway that
Like a firebox.
right, it was
Yeah.
like a firebox with Narcan in it. I keep saying Narcan naloxone because it's the same. Uh,
Yeah.
you can also get this through your health insurance. A lot of health insurance will provide this for no cost. And you can also buy it over the counter. But for parents and for students, I think it's really important for everyone to have this in their room. And for parents who's like, well, my kid's not doing that. Well,
It's not for your kid. Your kid can't use it on themselves.
right. So there's that part of, if for any reason it is your kid, which you would never think it would be, but most parents don't.
Right.
One-time experimenting could lead to something tragic. The other thing is, if it's their friend, if it's someone down the hall, if they're at a party, if they have this, and when you administer this, it doesn't cause any harm if someone isn't having an
Correct.
opioid overdose. So you administer this. So that's what I wanted to share. Everybody should have it. It's just something that they should have access to, and you have to store it in the right temperature. So if it's in your car and it's in the winter, it can compromise the the effectiveness. What was it that you want to share? Because you're the doctor. I've just talked about this so many times, and it's a message that people need to hear.
Yeah. So this is just a little practical thing. So when do you use it? You use it in the setting of finding someone unconscious. How do you know if they're unconscious? You can't wake them up. So, shake them by the shoulders, say their name, Harlan, Harlan, wake up. Can you hear me? If Harlan is out, he's unconscious, and there's not an obvious cause, there's not a tree that fell over and hit his head. If there's not an obvious cause, assume that it could be an opioid overdose. And what you do is, this comes in a little plastic container, just like your nose sprays, like Flonase, or anything you use for allergies, right? So you take it out of that. But here's the simple thing. You know how kids say no cap, meaning like for real? No cap. Narcan, no cap, because you're going to want to try and take this off, but there's no cap. And when you're panicked because someone's unconscious, you need to remember that. So that's my little tip. So Narcan, no cap. All you do is you just put it in there, put your thumb on the bottom of there, spray it. There is only one dose in here. Don't do a test spray into the air. So Narcan, no cap, put it in, spray, call 911. That's it.
Just one nostril.
One nostril, one time, and you stay with them. 911 will be talking to you. They'll be sending somebody, and a lot of times that will revive them, and they may need another one. Depends how much they've got on board. You may not have another one, but at least you've got 911 coming, and that's how you save lives.
So, and I've heard people say that one dose doesn't always do the trick. So, even having two is
Right.
is helpful. And then I know that you said that there's only one full dose in there, but just
Yes.
from people sharing messages with me, they've been able to get another one sometimes. So if someone thinks that if someone doesn't if the first one isn't effective, at least I mean, they could try to do a second one. Don't you think?
They could do a second different one, but there really is only one. There's
One,
only one spray in here, and
right,
doing it a second time, and unless you were so nervous that you didn't actually press it, which
right.
can happen. I mean, these are scary. These are scary situations. It's like watching someone have a seizure for the first time.
Yeah,
You don't realize the impact it has on you. It's scary, and
right.
so we want to keep things as simple as possible.
Okay, so let's do a very quick. You are with someone, you're using alcohol, and you are with someone, and they are super drunk, and
Mhm.
you really don't know, does this person need medical attention? What should I do? Can you walk us through an potential alcohol overdose situation?
So, yes, if and again, the bottom line is, if you are if you're really questioning, do I need to get help for this person? The answer is yes.
Yes.
Um, it starts with slurred words. Usually people will be vomiting significantly. as their alcohol level gets too high. The scary part there is that your reflexes decrease as your blood alcohol level goes up. So you don't have a gag reflex, so you can choke on vomit if you're throwing up. In a case where someone is sleepy, like they're kind of, you think they're passing out, meaning falling asleep, going unconscious, and they're vomiting at all, that person needs immediate help. If someone can't stop vomiting, 3, 4, 5 times they're vomiting, they need help. When in doubt, call for help, because the medics can come and give them medicine that will slow down the nausea. They can give them IVs. And most importantly, if their blood alcohol level is high enough to be doing all of that, it can stop their drive to breathe, or it can cause an arrhythmia in their heart. So it can make their heart stop or their breathing stop. It stops your breathing by
Right.
or by slowing your brain down to breathe, which is also how narcotics stop you. That's how they kill you. They just, your breathing center is like, oh, don't need to breathe anymore.
Tell me about what happens once somebody stops drinking, and how long it takes for their blood alcohol levels to go down, because you have a video about that.
Yeah.
That was really helpful.
So the important thing to know is that after your last drink that you consume, your blood alcohol level continues going up for about 45 minutes. Let's just say an hour. Everything is, there's so many variables, and it depends what medicines you have on board, as to how all this is going to affect
Right.
you. But the important thing is, just, your last drink was at 1 a.m., you're still getting more drunk even though you're passed out. Your things are getting worse for the next hour. So you can't just check on somebody and let them sleep it off. That's why things get worse. And again, the way that alcohol kills you is it can decrease your drive to breathe. It can make you throw up and then choke on it, strangling you that way, or it can mess up your heart rhythm to where your heart is not working.
So if a student is in this situation and they are with someone who's really drunk and they put them to bed and they leave the room, they should go back in the room. You should not leave
They
the
should
room.
they should right, they should not leave the room.
Right.
It's hard because college students drink enough to throw up a lot. Most of the time, they throw up once or twice. They're miserable. They're not gonna die. But you don't know, because you don't know what medicines they take. You don't know if they are cross-faded, which means they may have other substances in their system. You don't know if they were on ADHD meds, which made them not even feel the first 4 drinks that they had, and so they've had way more than you think, because you think, based on the little bit that they slurred their speech or that they're a little unstable, you think they're not that bad. You don't get to decide that.
Yeah.
So that's why we're so big on getting help. And I know I hear all the time, well, if we did that, we'd be getting help for everybody every single weekend. Well, then we would have 1,500 less deaths per year. So I'm okay with that. I'm okay with getting more help than is needed. But the reality is, if you see someone, and if anyone has a seizure,
Yeah.
seizures are very common, you've got to call for help.
How do you know if someone's having a seizure?
It is usually pretty obvious. Not all seizures involve jerking motions, but in the case of alcohol, most of them are the kind of full blown. They are usually, they collapse to the floor, or if they're sitting lying on a couch, they're gonna fall down. And sorry, my neck is and they'll have jerking motions. Side note, a lot of times when people have a seizure, they lose control of their bowel or bladder. As a young adult in particular, that is very embarrassing. One of the nice things you can do as a bystander, in addition to clearing space, so that don't touch the person, You're just trying to keep them from, you don't want them to hurt themselves further. So if there's sharp objects, a desk, whatever, push things away. If you've got a pillow you can put under their head, if you've got a coat you can fold up, and just keep them from hurting themselves worse. But then also, just as a social nicety, if they pee on themselves, basically, cover it with
Right.
a jacket. It's just I can't tell you how many young people are more embarrassed about that aspect of it than the rest of the seizure.
Wow. Okay. So if somebody decides to experiment with alcohol
Mhm.
and they don't have a lot of experience, or if someone does have experience, because let's just assume someone's of legal age, and they're like, okay, I'm 21 and today
Right.
I'm going to experiment with alcohol. What are some things that student or that adult can do to minimize the risk to be as healthy as possible when you're trying something new, like alcohol?
Yeah. So, number 1 is to avoid luckily this trend is it's not gone, but
Right.
there was a big trend of, oh, 21 drinks on the night you turn 21. Okay, that's enough to kill you. That's just not smart. Understand that you only metabolize about 1 drink per hour on average across the board. So you don't want to be exceeding total big numbers of that. Next is drink beer. Drink beer or wine or a seltzer, something that has volume. When you do shots, it's a shot. It takes 1 second to drink it. And so you're going to drink more and you're going to get too much too fast. And that's where you get into trouble. If you are sticking with beer, wine, or again, like any of the hard seltzers
Right.
now that are very popular, um, you can get into trouble with those, but you have to work at it. You really have to push drinking
Right.
it. And I'm not encouraging that. I'm just making the
Sure.
comment that those are safer. They are less risky choices.
I've heard.
And and
Okay.
don't and don't mix substances.
So the liquor before beer, never sicker.
Yeah, no, that doesn't matter.
Okay. So it does. So if you mix the substances, it can get sick. Whether it's beer before liquor or liquor before beer, you just want
No,
to.
actually, I meant like mixing with other, like cannabis.
Right. Okay. Very
But
important.
but
Right.
but the whole beer before liquor, never sicker, and whichever way that goes, that actually has not borne out to be true. Kind of the only thing that's true of the things is the darker alcohols can give you more hangover effects, because of the congeners in them.
Okay. Eating.
Clear liquors like tequila and vodka tend to cause not as bad a hangovers. That you can get equally drunk, you can have equally bad problems doing shots with them. Again, stay away from shots.
Right. Food, eating
Yes. So,
before consuming alcohol.
yes, that will slow down the absorption of alcohol. Also, females get higher blood levels from equivalent amounts of alcohol than males. So do understand, if you are in co-ed groups, that even if 2 people were the same size, shape, and on the same medicines, if one is male and one is female, the female can get higher levels of blood alcohol faster.
Okay.
Also, interesting side note, um, the people have we have different genetic tendencies towards different things, addictions, etc. um, People who tend to get activated and energize the life of the party from alcohol are more likely to become addicted to alcohol. The people who have 1 or 2 drinks and get just kind of tired
Yeah.
and sleepy, not as much. So just something to note about yourself,
Yeah.
which way you go with that.
It's me. I get tired. Man, I can, 1 or 2 drinks and I'm cooked. I'm done. I'm exhausted. I want to go home. I want to watch a movie, take a nap, grab some food. That was not a big issue for me because I'd get tired. I get tired and my pants would get tight because I had some other issues. Water, the importance of water.
Hydration in general. If you can alternate a drink every other, it didn't even have to be water. It can be soda, but try and alternate alcohol, non-alcohol, or with water, or with Pedialyte, or Cure Hydration, or Liquid IV. But definitely remember that alcohol is a diuretic. So people know alcohol makes you pee. It is a diuretic. It makes you dehydrated, and that's part of the whole hangover picture, is that dehydration. So ways to feel less bad the next day as well include more hydration at night.
Hangover cures.
Yes. So I wish I could tell you that there was this magic combination of, B12, and that people have all the different things that they put together. There is the cure is to not drink too much, obviously, but there's not. What you want to do is you want to understand that a hangover is more than just dehydration. The dehydration is a big part, and a big part of the headache. You also have lower blood sugar. You also have an inflammatory response that gives you kind of the brain fog, where you can't really think clearly the next morning. And by the way, college students who are on ADHD meds, they have figured out that if they take those ADHD meds in the morning, that the brain fog goes away more quickly. Unfortunately, it also makes you're dehydrated, and your heart races, and a lot of times you're going to get some bad side effects of that. So that's really not the best idea.
Like, don't mix your prescription drugs with alcohol. Is another
Right.
thing. Don't.
Right. And so hydration, your stomach lining is irritated from the direct irritation of the alcohol. Your liver's irritated from the alcohol. You may feel nauseous. Sometimes taking an antacid like Tums, any antacid, the ones that you chew up work faster than the pills that you would swallow that decrease acid. So I would take an antacid, and then I would start with a broth type. If you have a rehydration solution like Cure Hydration, Liquid IV, Pedialyte, I would start with those. Next is honestly like chicken noodle soup. The chicken broth, it's very salty. It helps you retain the fluid, and it will hydrate you faster. And don't be worrying about trying to get food in there. A lot of times people feel very panicked that they need to have their hangover burrito or whatever it is that they think is going to cure their hangover. And honestly, that's really not the best thing for your gut. So that should be the last thing to come. And a reminder, what we talked about last time, but don't use straws. If you are nauseous, when you are rehydrating, you don't want to be drinking your drink from a straw, because you're introducing more air into your stomach, which is going to tend to make you feel a little more nauseous and might make you throw up again.
I totally forgot about the straw one. That straw one is like, so when you're rehydrating, avoid the straw. But if you're actually drinking something, that might actually be helpful because it'll make you feel more full.
It might on the front end.
Yeah, just thinking about it, the straw and how you do it, because a lot of people use straws. Interesting.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
fine.
Okay, so Dr. Jill, we got to cover a few more things, and I know our conversation can go on for hours and hours. And I mean, I can't think of one part of this conversation that isn't important. I feel like this is just so rich in terms of just time well spent. And there are two more things. This is a random thing, and I don't want to go into a rabbit hole with this one. And it's a controversial. Well, it's also very sensitive, and I really do want to set it up in the most sensitive way, because I had a conversation yesterday. I recorded a conversation with a legal expert, and we were talking about sexual assault. So it is a very serious issue,
Okay.
and we were talking about after, if something happens, and for a parent, how do you approach this if you in a in a terrible tragic situation, you get a call, or if you are the student and you are in a situation where you are the survivor, and I use the word survivor just from talking to so many people who
Right.
go through this, you are the one who is in power. You have the power in that situation where it doesn't feel like it, but you are empowered. And I think it's really important to understand that. But given this is not something anyone expects, and there are certain things that are really important to do after to take care of yourself, or if you are a parent who is triaging a situation like this. I wanted to get your input on, just how to handle that. But the part that I just want to make sure I get this in, when we're talking about preserving evidence, there was, you want to save all of the
Don't take
clothing.
a shower.
Don't
Right.
take a shower. You want to, and I'll let you go through it. But the part I wanted to just make sure of, which I thought was interesting, is to not put the clothing and the things you take off in a plastic bag, but to put them in a paper bag, because when you put it in a paper bag, it is more likely to preserve the DNA and to make it more valuable in terms of being able to use it in an effective way in terms of evidence or preserving that. So I don't know if you've heard that before.
Yes. And I think I get a lot of messages about this. I get a lot of texts and phone calls and messages um, about this situation from every angle. And I think the really important thing for parents, um, for the student to know, is to go directly to get help and get examined. Universities almost all have their they have a separate team that deals with sexual assault and those exams, and they're kind humans who are obviously dealing with really
Yeah.
challenging things every day. But you just basically want to go straight there. You want your friend to take you there. And if you're a parent who receives that call, you want to be encouraging your son or daughter to, again, have a friend take them directly to the appropriate place on their campus. It's almost always on campus. Hospitals have it as well. It depends on obviously the size of the campus and where you're at. But it's a very specific kit and very specific things are collected. Honestly, what happens a lot more often than not is that the first thing the person who has been violated wants to do is they want to just cleanse, and they want to get in the shower, and they want to just cleanse everything to feel clean and whole again. But it's best not to do that. It's best to go directly there. If you go, you do not have to press charges. The evidence will be collected. It's there, but you do not have to press charges. So you're not committing to moving forward. You are just allowing that evidence to be collected should you choose to do so.
Right. Uh,
And it is, then I really want to emphasize, this is not gender specific.
yeah. Anyone. I mean, I know there are so many students who go through this, and they don't know. No one prepares for that. And I think even this idea of, if you're the friend, or if you are the parent or the aunt or uncle, there isn't a guidebook for parents to know what to do and how to support someone, like, immediately, when something like this happens.
No, and it's hard not, many wrong things get said. There's a lot of everyone is feeling bad. Everyone is feeling bad, and often things get said that are very unintentionally hurtful, of along the lines of, what were you doing out past 2 a.m.? What were you wearing? What this, what that? What was the situation? and I begged you not to go to that party, and it's the best thing that parents can do is to say they, express their love and concern, and to help them get a friend to get them to the right place.
I was talking to a therapist who just offered the best advice when a student is going through something really difficult and they share that and it's shocking or upsetting or triggers a lot of different emotions. The default is, I'm so happy you called me. I'm so grateful you called me. Thank you for calling. Thank you for telling me. You know, it's thank you for
That's
sharing. And
Yeah,
that the default is thank you for sharing. And then the next part is, how do we get you the help you need?
right, right. How
Yeah,
can I best support you?
right.
How can I best support you?
The other stuff can be talked about at another time or another place. But in that moment, no one's going to hear anything and it's not going to help anyone. And the fact that someone's reaching out in a place of really being, you know, in a desperate place, the only response is, thank you for calling. Thank you for letting me know, or however they receive that. So, um,
Yeah,
okay. So that's a really tough one, and I wanna just take another turn, but I wanted to at least touch on that.
that's important.
It's these are hard things. It is so Dr. Jill, is so hard to prepare students and families for possibilities, because it's scary and it's
And you don't wanna fear monger, and you don't wanna
no,
all of that,
right,
but but there's some things if you haven't thought through, you haven't thought through,
right,
and it makes it twice as hard to
right.
react.
And that thing of, if you have a student who's away, if you're a student who is no longer in a place where you're sleeping in an environment where you have the people in your corner who love you, support you, help you, will listen to you. When you don't have those people within walking distance, it creates a new a new dynamic that requires some thought and some planning. So this is that part of it that, I think people don't really, they don't think this through, and we just want to make sure. And then this connects to the other piece. And I was so lucky uh, to visit with Dr. Lisa Demore. So, everyone knows Lisa Demore, and we talked about, it was a message from a parent who was so upset because their daughter was in a single, but had been having the boyfriend come over, and she was paying $2,000 more for the single, and it wasn't so that this daughter could play house. And it was, this mom's upset. And the question that, that Lisa was focused on is, why is the parent upset? And then this other piece of, if you have a parent who's upset, is the parent upset? Why are they upset? But if you have a parent who's upset and you have a student, a daughter who is in a adult relationship, maybe sexually active, maybe not, but whatever's going on, if that parent is a gotcha parent, if they're limiting and judging, then that student, whether they're 19, 20, however old they are, talking about sexual health, talking about birth control, talking about the emotions that go along with this, talking about being in a healthy relationship. That student could be cut off from that parent, which can be really difficult. And there are the questions, and this is where I wanted to land, is is the sexual health, the taking care of your body and understanding what you are exposing yourself to and being safe and as healthy as possible. Uh, how does someone do that and approach that as someone who wants to, who wants to be active?
So
I gave you a lot there. I gave you so much. That was so unfair because I
Just
gave you
enough to, yeah, okay.
well, it's just,
So,
basically the setup, just to like
yeah.
make it
No,
very
no, no,
clear.
so here's the thing. If someone is choosing to be sexually active, meaning sexually intimate with somebody else, obviously they need to understand first and foremost about consent. Consent is enthusiastic, ongoing, verbalized consent. It's not a one-time yes. It's not a it's not a okay. It's, I guess so. It's not going along with it. It's enthusiastic, ongoing, verbalized consent. That's number one. Number two, you cannot give consent if you are mind impaired. So if you are high from cannabis, if you are drunk, is that when most sexual activity happens? Yes, it is, but I'm just making it clear that that is not actually real consent. In terms of physical protection, if your body is capable of becoming pregnant, or the person you are with has a body that is capable of becoming pregnant, then you must use birth control methods. Young people are very fertile. I always suggest using two methods: one barrier method, most commonly a condom, along with, say, birth control pill, or there's different options of injectable, different longer acting contraception, including IUDs. It is really important to get tested for STDs. The thing is, while our numbers are improving a bit, um, which is encouraging, still, I want to get this number right. I wrote this down. 48.2% of all cases of sexually transmittable infections occur in 15 to 24-year-olds. Okay, so half of all the STIs that we have here in the United States occur in this young age group, right? And that represents only about 25% of sexually active people. So point is, there's a lot of disease.
Right.
The good news is most of it is preventable with barrier protection, and a lot of it is treatable because it's bacterial. Not every we're starting to lose the ability to treat some gonorrhea because it's getting very resistant, but chlamydia can still be very easily treated with antibiotics, but you have to know you have it. So being sexually active means being responsible. It means getting tested and knowing whether or not you have anything so that you're not transmitting it to somebody else, because the problem is many of these diseases are silent. And so it may not cause symptoms in you, but you can give it to somebody else and cause symptoms in them. And you don't want to do that. You want to be responsible. So you have to have grown-up conversations about this. And have you been tested? And this is when I was tested. And testing is very simple. It's mostly peeing in a cup for chlamydia, gonorrhea, etc. For syphilis and for HIV, that is still a blood test, but again, very simple. College campuses typically have free or very low cost testing. And I know that just saying the word vaccine is controversial, but the HPV vaccine prevents cancers. I have a friend right now who is undergoing, this is an adult male who is undergoing throat cancer treatment for HPV related disease. These vaccines prevent not only cervical cancer, but head and neck cancers. And they prevent genital warts, which we used to see all the time. And that's been one of the best things in the past, 15 years of going from seeing genital warts all the time, which make young people hate themselves and have horrible self-esteem. And they're really painful to treat, by the way, to those of, I don't want to say disappeared, but we see them much, much less often because of the vaccines.
That's
So do
great.
the things.
You've seen a reduction in that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so, do the things you can, prevent the things that you can prevent, but be responsible, get tested regularly, and understand that if you're hooking up regularly, the more you hook up, the more, I mean, you're at higher risk. It just is what it is.
How do you
And
define hookup?
Um, I was using that loosely to refer to physical intimacy, like basically sex,
Okay.
any form. And understand that oral sex, someone's mouth on someone else's genitals, can pass sexually transmittable infections, most commonly herpes. And this one we see the most going back and forth. And using a barrier helps prevent that. That's why there's flavored condoms. So again, it doesn't have to be a big, horrible, awkward conversation. This is just an adult conversation. If you're going to be intimate, you need to be able to have these conversations, and you need to be able to have conversations about what you expect, what you're okay with, what you're not.
Right.
Porn brings in a whole nother thing, and behaviors like choking behaviors are perceived to be more common and accepted than they are, and you need to be able to set clear boundaries and feel safe with anyone that you're going to be physically intimate with.
Yeah, I think it's really important, and for for anyone who's sexually active to have someone they can talk to, whether it's someone who's a senior or someone who's in their 20s, someone who's been there, who can just talk to you in a way that can reinforce those things that maybe your parents are saying. I think parents, sometimes what they share kind of falls into that dark abyss, and having that relative, having that other person is really important. And also, uh,
And talk with your doctor.
huge, right? And if you don't have a doctor, then you got to find a doctor and make sure you have that person in your corner, because this formula of people, places, patients. Who are your people? Where are your places? It
Right.
I'm surprised it took me this long to mention and bring it up, but I mean, this is basically what it is. It's, if you're going to do this, who are the people who can help you to make sure you are the most responsible and safest, and where are the places you can go to make sure that you are responsible and safe. And then, Dr. Jill, when I'm talking to students who want to be sexually active for the first time, I make it clear, like, first of all, you need to talk about birth control. You need to talk about sexually transmitted infections and figure out what that plan is. And if you're in such a hurry to have sex, and you really need to stop, because uh, you should be able to have these conversations, and you should be able to do these things you need to do, that could take a couple days, or maybe a week or 2 weeks. And then also the question, and we don't need to get into it, but the question of, and this is how I describe it when I go to, I go to lots of schools in lots of different states, and I say, if you are, if you are in a situation where you can possibly get pregnant, or you can be the one who impregnates someone, you need to be able to discuss what would happen in that situation, how you two would work through that, and actually have a meaningful conversation if the possible outcome of what you're doing is someone getting pregnant. And you have to be able to talk about that. And if you can't talk about it, then you shouldn't be having sex.
Right. And even more than that, I mean, obviously that's huge. Um, I think something that a lot of young people underestimate deeply is the impact that raising that level of physical intimacy in a relationship, how that impacts the relationship. I think that when you add in that extra level of physical intimacy, it can make ending relationships far more difficult. It adds in a lot of there can be guilt, there can be all kinds of layers, particularly when it's the first time for one or both of you to be physically intimate.
People totally underestimate the emotional impact. And I know there's friends that are more, and it's people who just say, it's not that deep. Uh, but and anybody who wants to comment on this is welcome to share. When you introduce sex into a relationship, it changes the dynamics, and you don't exactly know how that's going to impact you. So I'm glad you mentioned that, and I really
Right.
appreciate that. There was one more thing that I wanted to mention about that. Oh, for LGBTQ plus families, for students, I'm a huge ally when it comes to supporting transgender students, when it comes to supporting non-binary students, when it comes to supporting Anyone who is in any place in the gender spectrum or whatever it is, in terms of intimacy and what that means to you. I just want to just make it clear that I'm in your corner, and I know you are also. I don't want to speak for you, but in terms of a population that really needs people to support them and help them. And then the other part is making sure you have a doctor that you can talk to. Like, that's so important. And if you don't have a doctor, because for whatever reason, it's becoming more and more difficult to find
Well,
experts, right?
yeah,
It's
and
been
well, care is limited.
right, your gender affirming care and just being supported. A couple suggestions is to one, find the people on campus who have been there and done it, who are a little older than you or in the community, and ask them who those people are, because it's a much faster line. Sometimes it can be an advisor, it could be a professor, it could be someone who is familiar with the population. So like it's helpful to talk to those people. And then also, if you have a caregiver where you live, just seeing if you can get remote care, how you can be able to get that continued care, because it's a bigger issue that's coming up more and more.
Yeah, it's incredibly complex and, um, yeah, there's all kinds of things changing every hour on that. The one thing I would like to add back on the emotional
Yeah,
portion of it is that I think it's really important that young adults give themselves permission. What I see a lot is someone goes off to college, they're sexually active for the first time, and then they're like, "Okay, well, it doesn't matter anymore. I'm gonna use the word virgin. I'm not a virgin anymore. It doesn't matter, whatever." And then, um, inevitably, that's when I end up seeing them, and they end up with a disease, and then they're hating on themselves, and there's all of that layer. But just because you've reached a certain level of physical intimacy in one relationship, you don't have to do that with the next person or the next or the third or the 20th. You can choose what you want, and those rules change as you change them for yourself. So don't feel pressured that you have to do something just because you did before, um, because I see a lot of people very unhappy from that.
right,
And again, not people have very different feelings about sexual intimacy, and I'm not trying to body shame or shame anyone in any way, as much as I want to empower people that doing X, Y, or Z, whether maybe that's smoking cigarettes,
right.
and you don't have to keep smoking cigarettes or getting drunk or blacking out just because that was like that your persona before. Guess what? You can reinvent yourself and you can set new rules, and you need to do what's healthiest for you.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a great point, and just because you've done something once doesn't mean you need to do it again and again. And I try to reinforce this idea: if you do something and it doesn't feel great, um, then you can acknowledge what happened. If it does feel great, that's great too. But when you keep doing things and feel not good about it, stop and ask yourself why, and turn to people who can help you, because it might be providing some sort of relief for something else in a way that's not going to be healthy or help you. I think a lot
Yeah.
of times it's very easy to do things that are self-harming things to distract ourselves. It's like,
Mhm.
if one of the best ways to distract yourself um, is to you know, is to be intimate with someone else. I'll just talk like I normally talk when I'm talking to students. Listen, if you're having a problem and you use sex as a way to distract yourself because you can sex it away, you can try
Yeah,
to
and you can
sex it away.
hold on to the
Right.
relationship. Mhm.
You're in a new place and you're surrounded by new people. You crave intimacy. It feels good to be hugged. It feels good to be touched. And if somebody, you know that if you allow someone to touch you and hold you and hug you and do those things, it might feel good for a little bit, and it's certainly going to get someone to really like you for as long as it takes for them to, be done liking you. But
Mhm.
then that creates this cumulative effect of like, wow, I just don't feel good. So instead of keep continuing to do it, just really be in touch with how things feel and give yourself permission and time to feel it. So
Yes.
that's how I put that out there. Okay, we have talked. This has been so wonderful. Is there anything? I know that we had a few like rapid fire top 5 to 10, but what I think I'm going to do, Dr. Jill, is I would like to, send me like 5 of your favorite videos, and in the show notes we'll include some of your favorites that touch on these, because you've touched on pretty much most of these issues, whether it is on your social media channels or it's in the College Student Health Handbook. This is the third edition. It's the third edition. So Dr.
Okay.
Jill Grimes has updated this, and this book's been getting a lot of wonderful visibility, and it's organized in a way that's so easy to provide answers. So it's very prescriptive. So if you're dealing with something, you can, you just page through it, and it's Dr. Jill here who's, right from her to you. So I strongly encourage all parents and students, get this book. It's a wonderful book. Subscribe to your channels. I want to make sure, because we've talked about a lot of different things, and I always give guests, and especially when we talk about things that could be sensitive, is there anything that you would want to clear up? Is there anything that you want to revisit? Anything you think could be misinterpreted? Because I want to make sure that we have an opportunity to at least, just pause and just reflect for a moment to make sure.
I hope not. I hope it comes across that I'm all about just explaining medical and emotional risks, and things don't come without a price. And I'm not here to judge anybody for choosing this or that behavior, this or that drug, alcohol, whatever. What I want to do is to make sure that people understand, if I choose to do this, this is the risk that I'm taking. And if I do this and I have this happen, oh, here's what I need to do next to keep something bad from happening. So, um, my only hope is that I don't come across judgmental, because that's never my intent.
Right.
I I just want to, I mean, I just try and call it like it is. I want to talk about things that are real, and I want people to know that I think this young age of teens and early 20s, especially, it's just so filled with possibilities, and I just want to see you do your very best.
It's beautiful. Yeah, likewise. That's why I think we enjoy talking with each other so much, because it really is about trying to create some light and make things easier that could be really difficult and uncomfortable at times. If there are people who say, "Hey, I really want to learn more about Dr. Jill. Can you please tell us where we can find you and how to find you?"
Sure. So on Instagram, it's Jill Grimes MD. On TikTok, it is TikTok.collegedoc. And I've been kind of taking a little hiatus from that, but I'm going to jump back on that. And I'm not on Substack, or I haven't been as active on other things, but I want to follow yours. I'm very curious
Yeah.
about that. And I am on LinkedIn. I'm willing to connect with people there. I just haven't been super active there.
Yeah. Well, you have such great information, and I will continue to do what I can to spotlight it and to share it. And I know that a conversation like this is so valuable. And if anyone listening has, more questions you would want to address with Dr. Jill, things that you'd want me to talk about, and students, especially, it's like, you can do this in a way where it's confidential in terms of, I won't share who you are, but I can ask questions for you. You're always welcome to do that. I really see myself as trying to get a lot of experts who can be the people who have deeper expertise in certain subject areas, and in terms of being someone who could answer medical questions. I really, we've had lots of conversations. So I hope we can do more of that, and you're open to that. Uh,
Absolutely.
yeah, 'cause
Absolutely.
we can do it, and we'll do it in a way where we can actually talk and not get restricted. So like that, seriously, like that's where, yeah, that's where
It's
like,
hard.
well, Substack and YouTube, those are really great places where we can, that's the thing about, like, you have such great information that can be controversial just because of the words. I mean, you're not sharing controversial ideas, you're sharing information. Information's not emotional, but certain words trigger emotions and it can feel emotional. But how do you separate the information from the emotion so that people can be able to make the best choices? So I'm just thinking, like, in terms of, and we can always talk more offline. You just have such great information, and I'm like I get rejected and have so many obstacles, and I find that this is going to be a really great way to get messages out that need to be received. So
Anything we can do, I'm open to. I really appreciate all you do and how you lift up others around you, and, I'm just excited to be working with you.
this is cool. We got good stuff. All right, so we're gonna end the conversation for now, or put it to be continued. Dr. Jill Grimes, thanks for being here. We are so grateful to have you.
Thanks so much.